Ladies and gentlemen, I have stated consistently over the years that on big issues, Democrats and Republicans are not that different, and I've stated on foreign policy, President Trump is infinitely better than the average Democrat, and that's including Bernie Sanders nowadays. So, when you look at what's taking place right now in the Democratic primary, it's pretty obvious that they've simply funneled votes, progressive votes, left-leaning votes, back into the Democratic Party. They have no intention of implementing any programs that they claim to. They have no intention of implementing any of Bernie Sanders, any of his platform. Zero intention. In fact, just now, this evening, on the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell, or it was an interview with Lawrence O'Donnell, Joe Biden has stated that if he were president, he would veto Medicare for all. Okay, that is that is pretty much everything that I've been saying, and this is why I'm voting for President Trump. I'm a Trump supporter, and I want Americans home. So he's withdrawing Americans from the country's longest-running military quagmire. President Trump is bringing home Americans. This is exactly what I wanted. I wanted Bernie to do the same thing, but Bernie 2016 spoke about foreign policy. Bernie 2020 is a social media creation we're finding out that social media, well, we already knew this, but Bernie Sanders and his voters are finding out that social media is not real life. You look at what Joe Biden said. So Joe Biden said he would veto Medicare for all. His position isn't to profess support. Okay. If the legislation were to succeed politically, he would veto it. So if he got it, if the Senate had passed legislation, so he said if the House and Senate passed legislation, he would still veto the Medicare for all bill. So it's exactly what President Trump would do, or any Republican. Okay. And Trump is not just any Republican, but here, Joe Biden tells Lawrence O'Donnell, as president, he would veto Medicare for all if it passed both houses of Congress. And came to his desk. This is the man who's going to easily defeat Bernie Sanders tomorrow. Okay? Now, Michigan is tomorrow. He's up by double digits. He's up by double digits in two polls. Bernie's campaign is done. He did this to himself. Bernie Sanders did this to himself. And the pundits that took over Bernie's campaign in 2020, the pundits that he couldn't endorse, did it to him also. They do not want Medicare for all. And this is probably one of the biggest reasons that Bernie supporters, progressives, have been duped by the notion that it saves money. If you look at the $30 trillion by some estimates that it would cost, that's $30 trillion from the federal budget. Not 30 trillion. When people say, well, we spend more on healthcare, when they say we, they're talking about the United States in general. They're talking about the average American combined with government. When Bernie is talking about Medicare for all, he's talking about the federal budget. And when those studies are done on how much it's going to cost, they're talking about the federal budget. The federal budget, we spend $1.1 trillion every year. Multiply that by 10, that's well over $10 trillion. Okay, $11 trillion. That's not $30 trillion. You have to find that money within the budget. Now, President Trump is withdrawing Americans from the longest running military conflict, and he gets no credit from the left. Rose Twitter gives no credit to President Trump. But see, that's what would have to happen for it to even be feasible. So you look at Bucolic Buffalo, men in pantsuit on deck because Mr. Mickey is a front. That's right, Bucolic Buffalo. There's only future in their fronting. The MC Breed election, Bucolic Buffalo. Thank you. You know what? It's like you said, Bucolic Buffalo. It's like, gosh, who do we have? We have a shortstop batting .267 with 13 errors in 2 games. I think we should bring this person up. Yeah. So the federal budget for 2019 is $4.45 trillion. Okay. When they say that over $1 trillion of that is Medicare and other over $1 trillion of that is Medicare and other and other healthcare programs, federal healthcare programs. So you cannot say that you can't increase the budget by enough money just through payroll taxes. And then if you look at, I'm not going to get into the way Bernie wants to pay for things, but he's like, we're going to have a tax on CEOs who make 50 times more than their worker. It's like, well, that's not constitutional. You can't just go ahead and just out of nowhere pass legislation that taxes certain people, even if you don't think it's fair. It might not be fair, but unfortunately they were able to start their business or become a CEO or find ways to get the capital, whatever. I mean, they were able to do it. So then you just go back. But even then, like, we're going to tax the CEOs and pay for, I forgot what it was. You can't do that. It's not going to ever pass Congress. And then you keep saying, well, this payroll taxes will pay for this, and this tax will pay for that. It's like, well, it's going to affect the economy to where people are going to be laid off. People are not going to keep their jobs. And then they'll need even more social services, and then tax revenues will be in even greater demand. So you need a functioning economy. This is the issue with Bernie Sanders in 2020. He put all his eggs in Medicare for all, and Biden doesn't even want it. We save money. Yeah, after 10 years as a country, not the government doesn't save money. The federal budget would have to increase substantially every year. So you're not. It would cost, if they say it would cost $30 trillion, they're talking about the federal budget is going to have to come up with $30 trillion. We don't spend, in terms of the federal budget, $30 trillion in 10 years. So that's one problem. We spend a little over $1 trillion per year. That's not $30 trillion in 10 years. So that's just one of the many problems. But here, Joe Biden is even saying that even if it passed the House of Representatives and the Senate, even if it passed the House of Representatives and the Senate, he still wouldn't pass it. So it's like, it's like, what exactly are they doing? What exactly is Bernie's movement about? You have a situation where you're running against somebody, or what is the Democratic Party about? You have a situation where you're running, they're running based on policies that they have no intention, absolutely no intention of implementing. Absolutely no intention of implementing at all. At all. So I mean, it's now pretty obvious. Exactly. He's running on an economic platform doing a great economy. Exactly, which makes no sense. So in 2016, he wasn't, like, Medicare for All was just one of many things he wanted to accomplish. And even in 2016, he talked about foreign policy, but he was also, if you were on the left, the more sane alternative to Hillary Clinton. Now, Clinton is going to be nominee. Clinton's going to be nominee. She'll lose again. Biden, there is no way they're going. Biden is as much of a presidential candidate as Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren and Michael Bloomberg were. So that's not even, This is if you look, at what Bernie Sanders and Biden are about, it's almost as if Bernie has his own political party. He's almost like, when they say he's not a Democrat, it took me a long time to realize that's true, because I always thought that he was the epitome of a Democratic. I always thought he was the epitome of liberal value system, but he's not. He is not the epitome of a liberal value system at all. He is not. Okay. He is definitely not the epitome of a liberal value system. So, you have a situation where the federal government spends nearly $1.1 trillion on healthcare. Has spent nearly $1.1 trillion on healthcare in 2018. Okay, that's just for Medicare and Medicaid and CHIP. Okay, so $1.1 trillion out of around $4 trillion, close to $4 trillion. So how do you come up with $30 trillion that you could find within that budget in 10 years if you're only spending $11 trillion in 10 years, or 12 or 13? How does that work? We're talking about the federal budget. So Bernie supporters nowadays, well, you know what? We spend this on, no, not we. It's the federal, but then you have Green New Deal. Then you have abolishing ICE. Then you have student loan. Then you have banning fracking. Then you have everything else that Bernie wants. So you have a $4 trillion budget every year. How much is the budget going to increase? Why doesn't he just say that? He doesn't say that. You look at Bernie's. We have in 2018 it was a $4.1 trillion budget, federal budget, $4.1 trillion. Todd Rubel. Yeah, I guess if he wasn't, didn't take care of himself. Todd Rubel. So, how does Bernie Sanders plan to pay for his? Let's see. So, he's going to expand Social Security. Hold on one sec. Medicare for All. So, according to February 15, 2020, study by Yale University, the Medicare for All bill Bernie would save over $400 billion in healthcare costs and prevent 68,000 people from losing their lives each and every year. How can you come up with that? You have to assume that everything works well, that there are no glitches. But then you have to assume that you can afford it. What our current system costs over the next 10 years, national health expenditures are projected to total approximately $52 trillion. That's not within the federal budget. So I don't understand, what are they getting at? How does the federal budget increase? How much will we save? According to the Yale study and others, the Mercatus study said you'd have to double to triple tax collection. You weren't assured of the healthcare. You were not assured of the level of healthcare, the expertise, the level, the quality, and that was only if you double to triple tax collection, and then then it would work. How we pay for it? Current federal, state, and local government spending over the next 10 years is projected to be projected to total about $30 trillion. Yeah, but you're talking about the federal. Aren't you talking about the federal budget? Or you'd have to increase state budgets also. I don't think you can have a bill that increases state budgets. The revenue option Bernie has proposed totals $17.5 trillion. What? But it doesn't say that. What are you going to do? How are you going to increase the taxes to a 4% income-based premium paid by employers? So they're not going to just lay off people so they can just go around this. A 4% income-based premium paid by 4% income-based premium paid by employees, exempting the first 29,000. Okay, so employers would pay a 7.5, so you'd increase payroll tax. The Mercatus study doesn't talk about any of this. But anyway, this is the Yale study. The whole point is, even if I'm wrong, enacting the taxing capital gains, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't pay for replacing the cap on the state and local deductions. Raising the top marginal tax rate to 52% on income over $10 million. Okay. The taxes would still increase on the average American. Your income tax would increase. You'd pay more taxes every year. You're not going to not pay for Medicare for All. They think it's free. They think it's really free. It's like seriously free. Life Rotoll. I'm a Biden supporter. Changed my mind. Bucolic Buffalo! Dem Party has followed the Communist Manifesto and attempt to control the U.S. over the past 70 years, and socialism is the vehicle to communism, so what's the difference in Bernie or Hillary? Bucolic Buffalo, thank you! Well, Hillary is, in terms of capitalism, she'll definitely, I think that her thing is more state and government control over the lives of average Americans, especially in terms of the Second Amendment, other issues. With Bernie Sanders, let's just read the Mercatus study right here, because Bucolic Buffalo, he doesn't quote the Mercatus study. And then there's an Urban Institute study. So Mercatus study, Medicare for All. And the person who Not even doubling all federal, individual, and corporate income taxes would fully fund the proposal. So there you go. The cost of a national single-payer health care. Okay, so George Mason University, Mercatus study, Charles Blouse. The leading current Senate bill to establish single-payer insurance in the United States is that of Senator Bernie Sanders. It's called the Medicare for All Act. The desirability and practicality of this kind of health care will depend in large measure on cost, on what American taxpayers would have to pay for it. Medicare for All would place unprecedented strain on the federal budget. By conservative estimates, this legislation would have the following effects. Medicare for All would add approximately $32.6 trillion to federal budget commitments. Federal budget. So there you go. Only over $1 trillion within the federal budget of around $4 trillion is healthcare currently. So how do you add $30 trillion in 10 years if you're only spending about 11 to 12 to 13 trillion currently in 10 years for the federal budget? It makes no sense. Medicare for All would add approximately $32 trillion to the federal budget commitments during the first 10 years of its implementation. The projected increase in the federal health care commitments would equal approximately 10.7% of GDP in 2022. This amount would rise to nearly 12.7% of GDP in 2031. Okay, so first and foremost, the federal government would become responsible for financing nearly all current national health spending. Okay. We do not know how Medicare for All would disrupt the availability and quality of health services. So there you go. A doubling of all currently projected federal income and corporate income tax collections would be insufficient to finance the added federal costs of the plan. How does this... So there you go. A doubling of all currently projected federal individual and corporate income tax collections would be insufficient to finance the added federal costs of the plan. So... But it doesn't, there's no, the income tax here you look at, there is no mention of the phrase income tax on Bernie's in the how does Bernie pay for his major plans? Not one. Not one mention of the phrase income tax. This is why, just be honest. Say your income tax is going to go up, but you get all of these things. But he doesn't even mention it. So... like all of these ways to pay for everything he wants, he's trying desperately not to make the average American feel it. But of course, you'd have to if a doubling of all currently projected federal income, federal individual and corporate income tax. But then. Let's see. Payroll. So that he would increase payroll tax, but that would lead to employees being laid off. So and the whole thing is they're not addressing They're not addressing the ramifications, estimating the impact of payroll taxes. So you're getting less, obviously less in your paycheck, but the thing is like, you're going to pay for it anyway. You're going to pay for it anyway. The issue with Bernie is that he never owned up to the fact the average American is going to pay for Medicare for all. Not the bad people who are billionaires, the average American. You're going to pay for it anyway. You're going to get less of a paycheck. You're going to pay for it anyway. Hidden costs of payroll tax. You can look. I'm trying to find small business owners pay for layoffs. Anyway, the whole point here is that he never explained. He never talked. It's just okay. Even if I'm wrong, let's say I'm wrong. The whole point. JPAT official videos. I've worn it before. Thank you, JPAT official videos. I've worn it before, and I will wear it again. Thank you, JPAT official videos. Thank you. Rhett Lindsay. Are you at all worried about the current fall in the Dow Jones and its effect on Trump's reelection? Might last long enough for oil prices. Red, I'm not at all. I don't think. If you look at Rhett Lindsay, it is impossible to time the stock market in any way. And if you look at stock market crashes, the rebounds, 80% of the rebounds within stock market crashes take place on about 7 to 8 different days of the year that are impossible to predict. So you might have, the market, move way up a week from now, and then a couple days later, way up again, and then, 2 weeks later, up substantially. Market gains are very difficult to predict. Impossible, really, impossible. Impossible to predict. So, Brian Levy! But, well, I think that Hillary's going to be nominee. So that's the main thing. Hillary's going to be nominee. Brian, thank you. Hillary Clinton's going to be nominee, Brian. So, and I've been saying that since in my Huffington Post article, Clinton 2020 is a reality. Get ready for 8 years of Trump. That was written February of 2017. So, Rhett, the market, Rhett Lindsay, the market almost certainly will. You're not going to have a continual slow. And also, this is fueled by media obsession over what's going on. The media has like a 2 to 3 week cycle on anything, and then they just completely turn to the next obsession. So, it's a lot of this is a lot of this is basically media obsession than fueling this hysteria. So that's the main thing. It's a lot of hysteria, and Democrats are just loving it. Oh my God, they're loving it. They're like, oh my God, let's talk about it forever. Let's talk about it forever. We have to. But let's see here. So, I mean, it's kind of impossible to predict when the market will rebound. But, I mean, it'll rebound before... before the election. And that's the thing, you know. So, I'm trying to find an article here. Payroll tax proposal will lead to layoffs, business owners. This is a couple of years back. But if you increase taxes, whether it's a payroll tax or any tax, people are gonna pay for it somehow. Billionaires are not just gonna eat the cost and not ensure that their businesses or their corporations don't make up for the difference. Or corporations are not just going to eat the cost and make sure that their employees don't make up for the difference. You're going to pay for it somehow. And in terms of the Mercatus study, income tax and state taxes federal income tax and the state taxes or corporate taxes would double. You'd have to double to triple tax collection. So, I mean, it's like... You look at it's not just about Medicare for all. It's about the Green New Deal. Well, how do you then drastically reduce carbon emissions when you don't have the technology to do so? So when they say, well, we don't have the technology to do so, we just have to create urgency. It's like, well, what are you doing? Why do you can't even vote on a legislation? You can't even vote on legislation. Why don't you vote on some kind of law? It's like they can't even vote on they can't vote on a law. That would help the environment. They just want to just shout and they just want to shout at the top of their lungs and say, oh my God, if you don't do this, you don't do that, then, then you're a horrible person and you don't care about the country, the world. So... Florida Man Bear! I usually don't know I'm going to vote until I check Facebook. Shane we'll all be from before November. Exactly. Facebook is so important to the average American. It's unbelievable. So important to the average American. Don't you love that? Don't you love that? So important to the average American. So, and they never proved, they never explained, well, this is like, they never proved that this would, they never proved that any of the Facebook ads swung even one vote. And the interesting thing is, it's like, here's the full, how we pay for it. Current federal, state, and local income spending. So, like, impose a 7.5% income-based premium paid by employers. And the employers are just going to be okay with that? Okay. Eliminating health tax expenditures. Raising the top marginal tax rate to 52% on income over $10 million. There's not many people out there with income over $10 million. Replacing the cap on the state and local deductions. Taxing capital gains. That's not going to get enough money. Enacting the For the 98.8 Act, Percent Act, which returns the estate tax exemption. Okay, you're still not going to get $30 trillion. Enacting corporate tax reform, including restoring the top federal corporate income tax rate to 35%. Well, what do you think is going to happen to corporations then? You think they might lay off people? Using $350 billion, the amount raised from tax extreme wealth to help finance Medicare for all. And then what happens if it's not financed? What happens if there are glitches? Then that's just for Medicare for all. What about everything else that you want? And you still haven't explained how the federal budget is going to be impacted. Because there's over $1 trillion a year on not 320 million. You're looking at around 50 to 60 million Americans, not 320 million. So then how does that work? Then there's Medicare for all. Then there's Green New Deal. YouTube won't let me say deceased or Modelo. Florida Man Bear, thank you. Modelo is a great beer. Great beer. Even better than the name that shall remain nameless. Oh, I love bacon though. Love bacon. I'm responding to somebody else on the stream. Luke St. Martin, hello. Eric H526, hello. Florida Man Bear. Thank you, Florida Man Bear. Thank you. Thank you, Florida Man Bear. What do we have here? The Pootie Putin. Comrade Marianne Williams has returned to Russia in shame, now vacationing in Siberia. Pootie Putin. Thank you, Pootie Putin. Thank you. Green New Deal, that's a good one. Green New Deal proposals. If not the Green New Deal, then what? Well, why don't you propose some legislation? Okay, so here's a great article. 7 reasons Democrats won't pass a Green New Deal. The Atlantic. The task is enormous and the path is narrow. This is the Atlantic, okay? So here. 1, a Democrat must win the White House in 2020. Okay, so assuming a Democrat is president, the Democrats must retain. But see, these are all like, let's say Democrats put it off just barely. So this is focusing on just the political issues. The trouble with the Green... I wrote in the Federalist, you have electric cars run on cobalt, lithium, and other metals, and the mining of these metals are just horrible for the environment, the health of people who mine them. It's just horrible. And I explained that in the Federalist. So it's not as green as you think. Green New Deal will hit the poor with higher energy costs. Green New Deal could cost more than $90 trillion. Green New Deal, Pennsylvania. This is one. You have to win a swing state. So and then they say it doesn't call for an air travel ban. It just says till it becomes unnecessary. It's like, okay. No, the Green New Deal doesn't ban meter planes. Yeah, but it wants them to be like not a part of people's lives. Then why don't you just start like here in the Senate Green New Deal vote. Senate defeats Green New Deal as Democrats call vote a sham. Like, why? I thought that you cared about the environment. The Senate on Tuesday this is March 26, 2019. The Senate on Tuesday rejected the Green New Deal, with Republicans casting the proposal to reduce dependence on fossil fuels to combat climate change as a far-left idea, and Democrats taking the rare step of voting present. They voted present. This is like, not only will Biden veto Medicare for all, but they don't even want to vote on the Green New Deal. The measure failed on a 57-0 vote, with all Republicans and 4 Democrats blocking the resolution. Aiming to avoid an intra-party fight, 43 Democrats, including those who introduced the Green New Deal, voted present. Even the people who introduced it didn't even vote for it. 4 Democrats blocked the Green New Deal. So, like, how to get an 800 credit score LLC. Bernie's not strong enough to win. Well, yeah, exactly. This year, Bernie's movement is complete disarray. Complete and utter disarray. So, his movement is in complete and utter disarray, and so you're going to get less of a paycheck because payroll tax will increase. Much less of a paycheck. You'll pay for it there, and you'll pay for it in other ways with Medicare for all, and you'll pay for the Green New Deal. Well, that's assuming. How to get an 800 credit score LLC. Thank you so very, very much. Bernie's not strong enough to win. No, he's not. Let's say, hold on. Green New Deal. Let's read this. They can't even vote on legislation. They can only vote on a resolution. And then you have there's a great article in Pennsylvania. Oh, the labor unions are against the AFL-CIO. So, Green New Deal, AFL-CIO. Why labor unions are against AFL-CIO criticizes the Green New Deal, calling it not achievable or realistic. So, you have the largest conglomeration of labor unions on the planet, or in the country, the National Arm for U.S. Labor Unions offered a critical assessment. We will not stand by and allow threats to our members' jobs and their family standard of living go unanswered, wrote Cecil Roberts, president of United Mine Workers of America, and Lonnie Stevenson, president of International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And then, fair and just. Everything's fair and just transition. They're against it. AFL-CIO opposes it. AFL-CIO shreds. AOC's plan would cause immediate harm to millions. Immediate harm to millions. Well, there you go. Big Labor has come out swinging against the Green New Deal, with the AFL-CIO claiming the sweeping energy and economic reforms proposed by Senator Ed Markey and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez could cause immediate harm to millions of union workers. So it's like even their constituents don't want any of the policies. So why are they yelling at the top of their lungs all the time? So, this is the issue. It's not, look, it's not that it's not that it's not that the proposals, the policies are they're noble to an extent, but it's noble to an extent, but the interesting thing is, it's like, it's not noble if it's not feasible. It's not if it's not feasible, how can you pontificate and judge? That's the issue. That's the issue. You can't, if you can't explain how, if your own political party doesn't want your policies and they're just using these policies then that's just a very shameless way of just funneling votes. So they don't want the loudest voices on Twitter don't live in the real world. The real world is in politics run by, does your political party, it's run by the reality that if your political party doesn't want what you're proposing, then maybe what you're proposing is meant just to funnel votes. Maybe it's a noble thing, Medicare for all, but it's not feasible. And if it were feasible, and Democrats don't want it, then that should tell you something about that political party. So This is large. Okay, so you increase payroll taxes, the employer and the employee both pay. That would lead to layoffs, and that would also lead to, if not layoffs, a reduced check, so a reduced income or salary. So it's like so all the people say, well, it's free. It's free. It's like, no, it's not. I was trying to find a CNN article, or an article that you make $70,000 but cost your boss $88,000. This is February 28, 2013. Well, that depends on benefits and several layers of taxes. It typically ends up being 18. How much does an employee really cost? Well, that depends on benefits and several layers of taxes. It typically ends up being 18% to 26% more than a worker's base salary. It can even be even higher for larger corporations. The extra costs are often cited by business owners as the biggest deterrent to hiring. Better sales might justify. So this is an interesting article. This is by Jose Pagliari in CNN Business, and this is journalism was a lot better back in 2000. There's February 28, 2013, when they had no just maniacal rabid agenda to just take down the presidency. But here, you make $70,000, but cost your boss $88,000. So Jose Pagliari, CNN Business. This is the article. This type of article I was trying to find. How much does So this is when Bernie says, we can pay for Medicare for all payroll taxes. It's no problem. It won't affect the business or your paycheck. It's like, yes, it will. It'll affect both. How much does an employee really cost? While that depends on benefits and several layers of taxes, it typically ends up being 18% to 26% more than a worker's base salary. It can even be higher for larger companies. The extra costs are often cited by business owners as the biggest deterrent to hiring. Better sales might justify adding another $70,000 salary to the payroll, but in reality, that extra employee will probably cost closer to $88,000. Anytime that Tony Knopp needs to calculate the cost of an employee, he adds another 20% to their salary. The CEO of Spotlight Ticket Management said staffers don't understand how much we are investing in them. We see the salary and assume that that is the number. It's not, he said. That's especially true for new employees who need training. They cost Knopp they cost the company half a year's salary by the time they start producing. Here's the breakdown of implicit costs considered by few but the boss. Let's assume a base annual salary of $70,000. Social Security tax, $4,340. This is in 2013, by the way. This is the largest portion of the payroll tax paid by employers. Business owners must pay the federal government 6.2% of every dollar their workers make until the annual salary reaches $113,700. Workers pay an identical tax, and those combined funds contribute to the nation's Social Security system. Medicare tax, $1,015. This is the second part of the employer's payroll tax, and it contributes to the nation's Medicare system. Bosses owe the federal government 1.4% of their workers' earnings, no matter how high those salaries are. Okay, so you increase payroll tax, you're going to increase the tax on employers and employees. State unemployment insurance, $478. That cost might look small, but it can vary wildly. Unemployment insurance is mandatory, and businesses pay it to cover the cost of unemployment claims made by former workers. As for drivers who keep getting into accidents, insurance rates are higher for businesses that fire a lot of workers. So healthcare insurance benefits tend to. This is by far the highest expenses for any boss, and it's one that most small businesses don't skimp on. Last year, 84% of business covered some or all of their workers' health care premiums for family coverage plans. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that's just one example of when you look at when Democrats say, well, just increase the payroll tax. But that was just one of many taxes. The employer and the employee are going to have to pay for it. And Bernie could have simply said, you're going to have to pay, but this is what you get. The word income tax is not even in the page on his website that talks about Medicare for all. So then you have, and like I said, AFL-CIO shreds Green New Deal. So you have Joe Biden, who would veto a Medicare for all plan. You have the AFL-CIO, who's against the plan, Green New Deal, and then 4 Democrats who voted against the Green New Deal in the Senate. Like this, they live on Twitter. They live in a cyber reality, and then they say, well, if you don't agree with us, you're immoral. That is also an element of Bernie's campaign that was not there. That was definitely not there in 2016. So I think that when you look at what's happened to Bernie's movement, it started as, okay, let's change the system, but there are many ways. And let's say when I wrote about Bernie Sanders in the Hill, the Huffington Post, and Salon, and all my articles were given a stamp of approval by editors, Bernie Sanders was inclusive in his message. He didn't care if you were conservative. He didn't care if you were a Republican or didn't, he talked about foreign policy. He wanted to bring home Americans. He wanted to break up too big to fail banks. It was not this type of, oh my God, we're so much more morally superior to you, and if you don't want Medicare for all, there's something wrong with you. It was just, look, Medicare for all was just one of many proposals that he talked about. One. They focused on that for 4 years, and Biden is now saying he would veto it, and Biden is going to defeat Bernie in Michigan. And then Bernie's campaign is essentially completely done on March 17th when there's Ohio, Florida, Arizona, and Illinois. He's not going to win any of those states. So it's done. So Hillary Clinton doesn't even have to run. She just waits. She just sits there and waits. But Florida Man Bear, congrats on 315. Your form is decent from a bad man. Thank you for a bad man. Thank you, Florida Man Bear. Greatly appreciated. Yeah, I'm feeling it a little today. I'm feeling actually a lot better. I felt fine today, but I felt a little bit, I could feel it. But I appreciate that. Now I'm just going to try to take it slowly. And in about 6 to 7 months, Florida Man Bear. But you know what? By the time Hillary Clinton loses to Trump again, let's see. I'll try to go for let's see, 405. Try to go for 405. Or 415, sorry. No, wait a second. 315, 70. Oh, no. That's right. Maybe 385. Try to, but I have to increase strength levels, on other exercises also. Florida Man Bear, thank you. Thank you. Very greatly appreciated, by the way. Thank you. Um, 3:15. Let's see. So yeah, actually 4 plates is 405. So that's probably a year away. That would be a year away. 405 is a good year away. So next March. I just want to take it really slow because I don't want to hurt myself or anything. So. But thank you, Florida Man Bear. The 405 would be fun. That would be fun. Florida Man Bear. I can see myself doing it, but the thing is, I have to increase strength levels on a bunch of other exercises. So we'll see. We'll see. We shall see. Thank you, Florida Man Bear. Greatly appreciated. Yeah, I just, it'll be interesting. Tomorrow's going to be a very tough day for Bernie supporters because I know how it feels, but see, the thing that people don't understand is that when I was writing about Bernie Sanders, after July 5th, 2016, I never said he was going to win because he was running up before July 5th, before Comey covered up all the crimes committed by Madam Secretary. By the way, Florida Man Bear, thank you again. Greatly appreciated. Did I miss a super chat? Agent Pepsi! Hey, Biden will promise whatever fits the polls. Pretty much. JC1042, thank you. When I was saying, Bernie Sanders is the front runner, he was running against somebody in any other circumstance. Would have been indicted. Any other human being, any other citizen would have been indicted. You cannot transfer top secret. And then they're like, oh, well, you know what? It's like, yeah, they don't. If it's a scandal on their part, if it's Hunter Biden or anything, they don't care. This is interesting. So while employers do technically pay payroll taxes, each employee indirectly pays these taxes because the employers adjust wages to account for their obligations to government when hiring. So you're going to always, they just say, oh, payroll tax increase. Like, well, it's going to be paid by the employer and employee, mainly the employee. So, and it would lower the incentive to hire people for employers. But don't tell that to the people just yelling on social media. Because, social media is life. That's reality. The great thing about actually living life is you can walk down the street and nobody's going to yell at you and say, what? You're not in favor of the Green New Deal? Because it doesn't work. You just don't. In real life, if a person doesn't know you, almost always, they don't just come up to you. And if they do, watch yourself. So, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's see here. So let's see if they're... Joe Biden is the antithesis of Bernie Sanders in every way, and he's going to easily defeat Bernie tomorrow. Even if Bernie wins tomorrow, he's not going to win March 17th. March 17th is a huge day for the Democratic Party, and it's just one step closer to Clinton winning. So... Shelby Simple Life. Hillary's definitely going to be the nominee. Who will be her running mate? Shelby Simple Life. I think Elizabeth Warren. I think either Elizabeth Warren or Amy Klobuchar. I think Elizabeth Warren or Amy Klobuchar. I think she'll have a female. Elizabeth Warren's taking one for the team. My God, is she taking one for the team? My God, is Elizabeth Warren taking one for the team? Going into, the Democratic primary, specifically Shelby Simple Life, specifically to take votes away from Bernie, and then when she made up a quote about Bernie, then just merge all those votes back into what Warren did is insidious and brilliant. She started off as siphoning voters away from Bernie, and then with the vitriol and with the made up quotes accusing Bernie Sanders of saying something he didn't say, then she actually consolidated the votes that she took away from Bernie, and they became Biden voters. And every single voter for Warren went to Biden, but she took voters that would have voted for Bernie initially. So it's pretty unbelievable. What Warren was able to do is actually a very nefarious, but brilliant if you're Hillary Clinton, brilliant strategy. Shelby Simple Life. What about the... that's the Democrats. Democratic Party. They just don't care. They just do not care. They do not care at all. They do not care at all. Shelby Simple Life. Thank you. They just don't care at all. Let's see, Joe Biden. Ladies and gentlemen, be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be an important day. New polls show Biden up big in Michigan. So, let's see. When will Michigan primary be announced? Okay, so... let's see. I'm thinking almost certainly by, 5 p.m. Pacific? And he might, depending on how well... They'll probably call it after 10% of the votes. Biden won. Yep, Biden won. Biden won. He won. Polls close at 8 p.m. So that's what? Let's see. Time in Michigan. Yeah. So 5 p.m. Pacific. So by around 6 p.m. Pacific, be here on this channel. And we'll have an epic live stream because it's going to be the end of Bernie's campaign. Gosh, you shouldn't have pushed the Steele dossier, Bernie. Not good. Not good. Didn't help you. Shouldn't have pushed the completely debunked and bogus and absurd narrative that Trump works with Russia. Gosh, that didn't help you at all. Now they're using it against you. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this has been fantastic. Thank you so very much. To my super chat, thank you so much, everyone. Greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you. To my super chat, thank you. I will be. But check out H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. Great segment coming up. And people, thanks so much. I will see you. Tomorrow is going to be a huge, huge day. It's pretty much the end of Bernie's campaign, the beginning of Clinton's campaign. Give me your thoughts, everybody. Thank you so much. And if you want to support my voice long-term in this election cycle, my Patreon is below. Thanks, everybody.